Hi everyone, and welcome to NCARB Live. I'm Samantha Miller, and I'm here with Jared Zern, the Director of Examination, and Michelle Cohn, the Manager of Examination Development. Now today we'll be sharing insider tips about the ARE, specifically how to study for the exam, best practices for navigating vignettes and multiple choice, and what to do if you happen upon a setback. Now we'll have plenty of time to answer your questions, so if you have any, feel free to submit them during the webinar using the Q&A tool on your screen. Now to kick things off, I thought you could both briefly introduce yourself and tell us what you do here at NCARB. Jared?
Sure. So my name is Jared Zern, as Sam had said. I am the Director of Examination. I've worked with NCARB now for 6 years. That entire time I've been working on the development of the examination, so I do have a lot of insider knowledge on both the vignettes and the multiple choice side.
Thanks, Jared. Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Cohn, and I have been at NCARB a little less time. I started here about 6 months ago, and also working on the examination, looking at the development of it. I'm also an architect, and Jared is as well, and so we've both been through this exact same process, IDP and the exams, and it gives us a lot of insider knowledge as well, just having experienced the whole process ourselves.
Thanks, guys. Now, it's important to remember that ARE 4.0 is going to be around until 2018. So, Jared, what should candidates keep in mind?
Well, I think that is really the key piece of information, is that we are 3.5 years away from ARE 4.0 being retired. So it gives candidates a lot of time. If you're currently thinking about starting to test or you're in the process of testing, you know you have a lot of time to finish. Now, we are communicating that ARE 5.0 will start in late 2016, but that doesn't mean that we're turning off ARE 4.0 at that time. So the benefit you have as a candidate is when we launch 5.0, if you want to, you'll be able to choose to transition, but for now, you can focus on 4.0.
So keep testing. Thanks, Jared. Now, Michelle, you were a former licensing advisor for Washington, D.C. How did you motivate interns to keep on going, keep testing?
Well, that's a great question. That's something, that motivation factor is something a lot of interns struggle with. I think the key thing is develop a plan and stick with it. So whether your plan is to take one division every week and just knock them all out quickly, or take one every 3 to 4 months and just kind of work your way through it a little more slowly. Whatever works for you is certainly the way to go. Take into account what your experience is, what areas you feel strongest in, where you feel like you need to spend more time studying. Come up with that plan and just stick with it.
Now, as you mentioned, you're both architects. You both took the examination when there were 9 divisions, I believe.
Correct.
Can you briefly tell our viewers what both of your strategies were?
Sure. So my strategy was I kind of had the longer approach to taking the test in that I really built a 3-year plan. And what that was is, at the time, my work schedule, I knew my summers were lighter than the rest of the year. So I planned to do 3 divisions every summer. So I would study, take one in a month, study, take the next one in a month, and just kind of did this cycle over and over again. What that did allow for me, though, is if I failed one of those, I knew I had to wait 6 months, and I could then pick that one up like mid-year and try to get that done around this time of year.
But candidates no longer have to wait 6 months.
They don't. It's one of the great changes that just went into effect on October 1st, is that now the wait period is 60 days. So, and we understand that that'll probably change the behavior. So my thing was, let's say I was taking the structural systems division at that time. It was called general structures. And if I failed it, I would move on to the next division and just take that. Well, now if it's only a 60-day wait period, I may decide to just sort of reset, go back in, update my knowledge, try to gain more experience on structures back in the office before I would go in and retest right away.
Good advice. Michelle, what about you? What was your study strategy, your plan?
My plan is similar to Jared, as I took them about 1 a month, and I wasn't quite as organized about taking them at a certain time of year, but it's just I took 1 a month, and then gave myself a few months off, really, just to, as life gets in the way, maybe around this time of year you have a lot of holiday traveling, and just give yourself a break, and then, get back into it and take a few more. For me, that was the most effective way, just kind of block out my calendar for a few weeks, study really hard, take the exam, and then treat myself to a little bit of a downtime.
Good plan. Now, there's a lot of ground to cover when studying for all 7 divisions. Jared, where should candidates start?
The key is really to focus on one division at a time. Right. You don't want to try to study for all 7 divisions. Some people may choose to do that. We hear a lot of stories about people who used to test in the good old paper pencil days where they literally did have to take all of the divisions of the ARE in a 4-day period. So they studied everything at the same time and then would go in and test. I know most candidates today really focus on 1 division at a time. That's what I did. And where to start as like what division, pick something you're comfortable with. But the other thing is also pay attention to NCARB's information on test strategies in getting ready for 5.0. We've put out that realistically, construction documents and services, programming, planning, and practice, and site planning and design are the 3 most critical divisions to maximize your credits in 5.0. So I would look at taking one of those 3 first.
Great. Now, Michelle, you actually used to teach AIA prep courses, or ARE prep courses. Do you have any study tips you can share with our viewers?
Well, I mean, one thing to consider first is where are you strongest and where do you need to spend some more time studying? Just think about your own strengths and weaknesses. Focus your studying in those areas. But also look at the resources around you. I used to teach at the local AIA chapter here, his prep classes. I know many AIA chapters around the country offer prep classes. Look for those resources around you. Look for other people who are studying right now. There's plenty of people taking the exam. So sometimes just finding other people who you can bounce ideas off of, share study materials with, even just getting a group together to just sit and study together and have someone to be with every week, can really make a big difference in just the motivational factor.
Thanks. Now, the moment I think all of our viewers have been waiting for. Let's switch gears and talk about vignettes. Jared, how can candidates avoid what we call a fatal error?
So the dreaded fatal error, as a lot of people are always really nervous about this one thing that they could do wrong on any vignette that would cause their entire division to be scored as unacceptable. And the truth is there are features out there that are very critical. And those features really relate to the major health safety issues of architecture. So the best thing you can do is when you're solving your vignettes, be sure you're just addressing all of the codes that are identified in that code document as part of the vignette.
Okay. And if you're looking for additional insight, detailed additional insight about navigating the vignettes, stay tuned because we are releasing a new video series coming early 2015. And Michelle, you've been busy working on that.
That's right. We've been hard at work on that video series here at NCARB. And the series will go beyond what we're already offering in the exam guides. We have the tutorials, of course, in the practice software, but in these new videos, we'll be showing more screenshots of and really kind of a live web capture of how to use some of the tools, suggestions, recommendations for plotting out your solution to the vignette and really maximizing your time and your efficiency.
Yeah. And one of the key things is we are going to touch in more detail on what are some of those major features to look out for when you're preparing for any one of the vignettes.
And again, that's coming early next year, so stay tuned.
Yes.
Now, our data shows that on average, candidates usually fail 1 exam. Michelle, how can candidates bounce back, stay the course?
Well, one thing Jared was mentioning, the 60-day retest policy is a great new policy that we have here at NCARB. So I think it's going to vary for different candidates. If you need to just take that time off to just give yourself a break from studying and mentally recharge, I mean, sometimes that's really what works for a lot of people. For other people, when you get that score report back on the back side of it, or the second page, we provide more information about where your strengths and weaknesses were in your exam results. So use that to your advantage and look at that. Consider what you might need to spend some more time studying. Maybe there's more that you can do in your work situation to learn a bit more about those particular topic areas. And maybe it might work best for you to just jump right back into it and retake that division while it's still fresh in your mind.
Thanks, Michelle. So now we have time to answer your questions. We've already received a lot of questions via email and through social media. So if we don't get to them all, don't worry. We will have time to answer them in an upcoming blog post. So our first question comes from Sean. Why can we not review incorrect vignette responses with our exam reports? It's a good question.
So what we do is on your score report, as Michelle had mentioned, on page 2, you're going to get descriptive feedback as far as how you did on each of the multiple choice content areas and an overall rating of how you did on each vignette. So they're rated as either level 1, which means an acceptable solution, or level 2, which is not an acceptable solution, but sort of close. You made some mistakes, that's not good, it's not acceptable. And then level 3, which is where there were probably either 1 or 2 real serious errors or a bunch of little things that added up. So we don't allow candidates to review the vignettes that they actually took, partly because those vignettes are still live in the test centers. So you were exposed to it once. You answered the question, that's fantastic. We don't want to overexpose our items. It's really an exam security issue. But do use the score report because that gives you the feedback of, okay, if I didn't do well on the site zoning vignette, if it's if it came in as a level 2, I can understand, okay, it was probably a couple of little things I did. I just want to go back and check how I'm finishing out some of my details in that vignette. If it was a level 3, it was something significant, and you're going to have to then kind of, and this can be a challenge, I understand, but you're going to have to kind of think back to what were some of those critical things that I may have done wrong. And I know that's a hard one because I failed a vignette exam as well, and I know what that's like to try to rethink about what you did and you just can't remember. So oftentimes what ends up happening is you just sort of re-prepare for the entire division, and that's the best approach.
Thanks, Jared. This is a somewhat similar question. How can I practice using the vignettes? Michelle, do you want to take this one?
Sure, absolutely. We have the practice software available for free download from our website, so definitely take a look at that. We have a sample vignette for each division of the exam. So it's a chance to get in there, see what those vignettes would really be like. The samples that we have in the practice program are really very similar to what's on the actual test. A lot of people ask, well, where can I get some more practice problems, or give me a hard one that's really like what's in the testing center. But the fact is, what's in the practice program, those really are pretty similar to what you're actually going to see in the testing center. Now, one thing, the practice software, it does not work on 64-bit operating systems or on Macs. A lot of people have been aware of that. So we offer the practice software through a cloud-based service, which is just $10 a year. It gives you unlimited access to practice all of that software. So we really want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to look at that software before they test and really prepare.
Yeah, and as Michelle had mentioned, the key to understanding the software is just learning to use the tool. Mm-hmm. It's not about trying to figure out what's going to be this really hard vignette that you're going to get in the test center, because they're all like the ones in the exam guide. So really just focus on what's the right way to use the gutter tool, what's the most effective way to use the road tool, so that when you get into the test center, you can focus on solving the problem and not have to be worried about how do I use this software.
Thanks. Do all questions carry the same weight in the exams?
So the answer is not exactly, because it depends on if we're talking about multiple choice or vignettes. So from a multiple choice perspective, the answer is yes. Every multiple choice item is worth 1 point. So that's a very important thing to understand when we talk about strategy, maybe a little later on. Now from a vignette perspective, the vignettes are worth a different amount of points because, as candidates have started to experience, some of the vignettes take 45 minutes. Some of the vignettes take a couple of hours. So obviously the more time you're putting into the vignette, the more important or the more points that are going to be assigned overall to the weighting of how that vignette works.
Thanks. Our next question is from Jonathan. Can we start testing even if we haven't completed the IDP?
In most cases, yes, you can. There's a few jurisdictions that don't allow for concurrent testing with IDP, so make sure you check with your state board requirements before you sign up. But in most cases, yes, you can definitely start testing while you're still finishing IDP.
David wants to know, can you cite specific study materials that are in line with the ARE?
Sure. So NCARB does not actually endorse any of the current test prep providers. So that's sort of a role that we have not taken on. What we can do, and what we do today, is we have copies of our exam guides even here on the table. And if you go into any one of our exam guides, on the back, we have a list of key references that you can refer to when you're studying for that specific division. And we will tell you those references that are identified are directly come from our item bank. Our item authors, as Michelle had mentioned, volunteer architects who work with us to write these items. When they write an item, they cite a resource which provides evidence or the backup of why that item is correct or incorrect as far as which options work and which don't.
Great. This question is from Tracy in regards to the schematic design building layout.
Got it.
All right. Is it an automatic fail if a dead-end corridor is created? Any guidance regarding the other drawing requirements and weights for grading is also appreciated.
Sure, I can take that one.
Sure.
In my world of vignettes and my experiences, can you have a dead-end corridor? The answer is no, you really do not want to have a dead-end corridor. Of course, if it's longer than what's allowed by code, and that's I had mentioned earlier, fatal features, it's really when you break those key code elements. So can you have a dead-end corridor that's 10 feet long? Absolutely, that's allowed by code. Do you want to have a dead-end corridor that's 25 feet long? No, you don't. That is not good, and that is a significant code violation, and that is going to cause your solution to be deemed unacceptable.
Richard would like to know if you could please state the 3 important divisions to take for 4.0 again, regarding the testing strategy.
Sure.
Sure. Excuse me. So we have suggested that construction documents and services, programming, planning, and practice, and site planning and design would be 3 great divisions to get started with in 4.0 to really maximize your opportunity to transition into 5.0 and maximize those credits in 5.0. We list them in that specific order, but as Jared was mentioning, if you feel more comfortable with site planning and design, go ahead and take that one first. You'll still be on that right track for the transition.
And again, you still have plenty of time to even once you get those 3 out of the way, keep going.
Yeah,
keep testing,
absolutely.
as Sam has said, and just get all 7 done and never have to worry about 5.0.
Good advice. Megan wants to know if NCARB is considering providing additional practice vignette software.
At this time, we are not. So the practice program has been built specifically for the ARE up to this day. And what we know is that we're not continuing the vignettes in ARE 5.0. So we are going to continue to support the current practice program in the form, and as Michelle mentioned, the online access to that as well through the life of ARE 4.0, but you do not expect to see any more updates to the software.
Laura would like to know how she can prepare for a particular exam knowing that there will be a sprinkle of questions from other divisions. And she provides an example. I'm studying for CDS. Should I also skim through SPD, PPP? It's a good question.
Absolutely, and a great place to start is looking in the exam guide for the division that you're going to be taking. We have a pretty detailed list in there of the content of that particular division. And yes, if you lay out those different exam guides together, there's definitely content that will overlap between the different divisions. But hopefully we've provided enough information in the exam guide for one particular division to really give you a sense of what areas are covered on that division so that you can adequately prepare. And hopefully candidates won't feel the need to, like Jared was saying, study for everything all at once, but really allow you to just focus on the one division at a time.
And this is a question we get a lot when we're out and we're doing outreach events and we get a chance to talk to you one-on-one, which is fantastic. The challenge really is the fact that that question that people think is oftentimes repeated across divisions isn't quite exactly the same question. So you're going to get questions maybe on masonry construction, in construction documents and services, because it relates to how you have to think about it in that realm of the practice of architecture, which is very different than that same or very similar masonry type question you're going to get in building design and construction systems, which is going to be more about the detailing or the flashing around a masonry detail.
Great. How many times can a candidate take an exam per year?
Well, with our new retest policy, we've talked about the 60-day wait period. What we should also mention is that you can take that division up to 3 times in any 12-month period. So that actually gives you an extra chance to retest versus the old retest policy when you had to wait six months, then you really had 2 retests in a year. So this gives you up to 3 chances within the 12-month period to take a division.
And we have a follow-up question just to confirm that you can take each exam up to 3 times per year.
You could, yes. I would be amazed if anybody actually had that much willpower, but absolutely, you could certainly test and then retest 2 times on each of the 7 divisions within a 12-month period. Wow, that would be a challenge.
It'd be a lot of testing.
Yeah.
It would be.
JT would like to know, why can't we get the results of the multiple choice section at the end of each test?
Very good question. It really gets into how our test is created. There are different ways of delivering licensure exams and other standardized tests. Some of us I know have taken like the SATs or the ACTs. And some of them give you immediate feedback, some do not. The reality is that our exam is built in a way, it's called a fixed form. And a fixed form exam, what that means is that all of our multiple choice items need to be evaluated in conjunction with the vignette to make a pass-fail determination. So we can't really give you a final score when you're done with the multiple choice because we're really not done scoring your exam.
Great. So Evan has a question regarding the vignettes. What do you suggest when the software won't allow you to directly snap a line or shape, especially when it comes down to setbacks? That's a good question.
That's a great question. And that comes up a lot, especially in vignettes that have curves, where maybe on site planning where there's a curved lake or site feature and you're drawing something other than straight lines. And the issue is that software has developed basically there's a hidden grid that underlies the program, so that when we talk about the snap, and some vignettes might snap every inch and some snap every foot, different for the different vignettes, the vignette is snapping to that hidden grid that's underneath the drawing. So sometimes when it feels like you just can't quite hit a 30-degree angle exactly, it's because of that underlying grid. But the good news is that our scoring has tolerances to allow for this. We know about that, and certainly no one should feel as if they might get penalized for that. We have tolerances built into the scoring to allow for some slight, that sense that you're sort of off a little bit, but we get the intent behind your solution.
That's a good question. So our next question comes from Kelly. Why does the vignette pass not carry over to the next time if you failed a multiple choice?
It kind of goes back to the way I answered the previous question about this holistic idea of scoring. So on a licensure exam, it is really about demonstrating your knowledge, skills, and abilities on that day. So it's the entirety of that moment. There's no such thing as like partial credit that carries forward, which is really what we would have to be doing in that situation. So you have to demonstrate the multiple choice competency combined with the vignette performance all at the same time to earn a pass.
Mia would like to know if a level 2 qualifies as a pass.
It does not. Level 2 is below the line on the score report, and so we just wanted to give you more feedback than just pass or fail in the descriptive feedback, because we know that would be really a challenge. So that's why we broke it down into the 3 levels. Level 1 means that really, you're doing well in that content area, or you did well on that vignette to the point where if you had done well in all the others, you would have received a passing score report and never seen that descriptive feedback. Level 2 means you're below really the performance level that we need you to be at to earn that license, and then the level 3 is that you're further away from that goal.
Thanks, Jared. Our next question comes from Steven. He'd like to know if he moves to a different state after passing 1 or 2 divisions, can he complete the remainder of the test in the new state? And if so, where would his first license be? So I think there's 2 parts of the question. So the first part of the question is, can you take the exam in multiple states?
Absolutely, definitely. The exam is the same in every state, in every testing center, so you can absolutely take the exam in multiple locations. I think part of what the question was getting at, though, and I'm sure this happens to many candidates, is you're partway through your exam and a career change or a family change takes you to a new state, a new jurisdiction. And so, of course, that question is, well, gee, I'm moving out of state across the country. Do I still want to get licensed in my original state, or do I only want to get licensed in my new state? And you have a couple different options. You can move to your new state, but still stay on track to test in the original state, get your license in that original state, and at that point apply for reciprocity for licensure in your new state. Or you can switch jurisdictions midstream. You would, at that point, need to contact the new state board, see what their requirements are. You'd have to apply for a new authorization to test from that new jurisdiction. But that's definitely an option that's out there to you. I think the most important thing is just contact the state board for the old state and the new state. Make sure you understand the requirements of each location and what's involved with that.
And if you ever have questions specifically about your situation and your record, please call us. We have a wonderful customer service team. They can walk you through the steps in your particular jurisdiction. So that's always an option.
Definitely.
Andy has a question about schematic design, the schematic design interior layout vignette. Is there a side clearance requirement for chairs?
Okay, so we're talking about, just trying to bring everyone up to speed, this is our vignette where you have to do the 5-room layout and then all the multiple pieces of furniture that exist in there. So when you do place chairs, or like the sofa, because that could be a potential item, there isn't a direct side requirement for the chair. Obviously you need clearance to get in front of the chair and to be able to sit down. But there's no requirement that says you must place the chair so many inches off a wall or away from a desk or something like that.
Melissa says she mostly works in residential architecture. How should she prepare for the PPP when a lot of the questions are geared toward the commercial architectural issues? It's a good question.
It is. Part of it is, if you don't have any experience in commercial work, your best resource is going to be either the licensed architect you're working under, because they may have experience in those more commercial projects, so you can have those conversations, or reach out to your mentor or your mentors or just other friends that you know that may or may not be licensed. This is really just a great chance for you to sit down and have some conversations with people about, you're preparing for PPP, you're reading about this and you see it would relate this way to residential, and then ask them how they think it would relate to commercial, and really start that dialogue to build your knowledge and understanding of maybe a world you haven't worked in quite a bit.
And another great resource, like we were talking about, if it's available to you, look at your local AIA chapter or other organizations. Again, might be another good source of just different perspectives on the profession.
Thanks. We have a 2-part question from Damien. Regarding the building systems vignette, would overlighting or underlighting be a fatal error?
Overlighting and underlighting are something you want to avoid. They are not one of those like super critical things that you would do. Now, in all honesty, if you put lights in every single possible place, that would be really bad. That would be like super overlighting, and you don't want to do that, right? Because that actually would become a health issue, and that's really bad. What's really kind of neat when you get the behind-the-scenes look at the vignettes like Michelle and I have is you start to understand how complex and really unique this scoring engine is to pick up on things like that. And lighting is a good example of where a little bit of overlighting or a little bit of underlighting is not critical and you're not penalized in a significant way. But if you really go crazy and you put lights everywhere, that is enough that it will trigger a big feature and you're not going to do well on that vignette.
So the second part of Damien's question, what is an acceptable distance separation between the supply and return air grills?
So I can take that one too.
Sure.
I have a lot of behind-the-scenes knowledge on vignettes. Again, it's an interesting one. It's challenging because some of our rooms are small, and I'm sure as you're practicing you may experience this, little storage rooms, things like that. By the time you place the light and you start thinking about where is my supply and where is my return, realistically you're going to want to keep an adequate, I would never personally would want to see those closer than 4 feet, right? That's just not good design. And so you're really going to have to just think through using good design logic of, in this space, if I put the supply close to the door, I'm going to just move that return as far away as I can to get good airflow, because that's what you're trying to demonstrate is your understanding of, if air's coming in here and it's going out there, I want it to move through the room before it's extracted.
And one thing to keep in mind when you're working on that particular vignette is most people lay out the ceiling grids first, but keep in mind you might need to go ahead and adjust the ceiling grids, tweak them. Once you start to lay out the lighting and then need to get the supply and return far enough apart, you might need to then go back and adjust the ceiling grid a bit more to really allow that sort of space to fit everything in.
Our next question comes from Leah. Why doesn't NCARB provide more extensive test materials for the multiple choice section?
Well, I think that, What do you think?
So yeah, it is one of the decisions that NCARB has made, is that we don't want to cross a conflict of interest line of becoming the provider of all of the content coverage you need to know to become licensed. So we are charged by your state boards to develop the exam in a very, consistent, uniform way that doesn't discriminate across any of the populations. So that's our focus, and we really do focus on just good, solid exam development. We are not in the exam preparation business. So what we do is we try to give you as much information as possible about the content areas you're going to be assessed on, and we list the references in the back to help you sort of decide which books you could potentially use. But that in no way is an all-inclusive list. You may have a great textbook from college that just use that. You don't need to go buy one of the books in the back if you don't have it or can't find it at your local library.
And Sam, you mentioned earlier the video series that we are going to be releasing soon in beginning of 2015. And besides, I think we talked about the vignettes that'll be part of that video series. These videos will also cover the multiple choice questions. And similar to the vignettes, we will be going beyond what's in the exam guide and giving more sample questions, talking more about the references and about the rationale behind those questions, why we cover those topics, why certain questions might be right or wrong, and really trying to give more information to our candidates.
I think the candidates are going to love the upcoming video series. I think they've all been waiting for it. Our next question comes from Ben. Are multiple choice questions with multiple answers also worth 1 point? Check all that apply?
They are. A check all that apply, a quantitative fill in the blank, or a regular good old, single select multiple choice, they're all worth 1 point. And it kind of goes back to that strategy thing I had mentioned earlier, that sometimes those check all that applies are simply just going to take longer to deduce, okay, what is the correct 3 of 6 options I need to select. So if you're hung up and you kind of know 2 and you're really kind of wavering back and forth on that third, that's probably a great item to mark and then come back to later.
Thanks. This question comes from Daniel. Since there are only 6 exams in 5.0, are you expecting a change or increase in the exam cost?
So right now we have not released the costs of what the costs are going to be for ARE 5.0. I will tell you we are intensively studying this because our goal at NCARB is always to keep the exam as affordable as possible to candidates. And sometimes that's not the reaction candidates give me when I'm talking to them. I totally understand that, because you'll hear the division price, and our current division price is $210. And they think, well, why does the exam cost $210? What I can tell you is that NCARB actually subsidizes the cost of the exam. So if we were to charge the true full development cost, you would not be happy. And what it is this organization has made a choice to take revenues from other areas and actually supplement both the internship and the examination process. So we are doing our best to keep the exam as affordable for the candidate population. I can't tell you exactly how much 5.0 is going to be, but we are doing our best to figure out how we can keep the price as low as possible. And I will say, I think candidates will be happy with what they're going to see for 5.0 division costs.
And in case our viewers had a difficult time hearing that because of all the sirens going by, it might be the motorcade. You never know in DC. Jared, could you just repeat the
big part
the main points?
Exam prices are going to come for 5.0 are going to come out in January of 2016. That is our planned release time. We are doing our best to keep the prices low because we do choose to subsidize the exam costs. So just pay attention, focus on 4.0. Don't worry about 5.0, but again, I think candidates are going to be happy with what they're seeing for 5.0 prices.
Thank you. Will score reports be delayed because of the holidays? That's a good question.
That's a great question. Jared and I were just chatting about that as well. And what some people know, some people don't, is that our scores are typically released on Thursdays. Generally on an average week, Thursdays is about when those scores come out. So a lot of candidates get those emails on first thing Friday morning. Coming up, it just so happens that we've got a couple holidays coming up on the next few Thursdays. So there is a chance that there might be maybe a 1 or 2 day delay in score reports. I wouldn't expect anything more than that, though.
Our next question is regarding the roof vignette. One candidate has failed this twice due to the gutters, so she has a specific question. Some study guides mention that there should be a downspout per 450 square feet. Others say just 1 on the other end. Which is correct?
So we do not become that technical when it gets into managing all of the rainfall coming off of your roof. So if you go back and look at the program, what you're going to see is it says that all water needs to be controlled. So really a single gutter and a single downspout off of any roof surface area is controlling that water. So you don't have to start getting into complex calculations of 400 square feet and oh no, it's a hip and what do I do in this situation? Just keep it simple, 1 gutter, 1 downspout.
Per roof plane.
Per roof plane,
Right,
absolutely.
right.
Yes, that's very critical.
Thanks for that clarification. Thanks. Let's see. I recently took a survey about ARE 5.0. What are you going to do with that information?
So first of all, thank you very much. For anybody who took the survey, we had over 4,000 candidates responded to that survey. And we specifically wanted your input about what you think about the exam, what you think about sort of some of the options that we're looking at. It's your feedback that's actually helping us make policy decisions on ARE 5.0. So what you can expect to see is in January, we're going to be building some blog posts that talk about what the survey results really showed us. We're also taking that information to our examination committee, which is a group of subject matter experts that really leads the development of the ARE, and they're going to be using that to start to establish policies for 5.0. Things like pricing models, as was discussed earlier. Like, are there some ways we could look at some opportunities to give you discounts on exams if you can bundle them or do other things?
Thali would like to know why there isn't a way to grade your vignette through the practice program.
So I've gotten some of the history on this. The vignette software was developed long before Michelle or I even were at NCARB, because it was developed back in the early 1990s.
Right.
So that was one of the questions I even had when I started here was, why don't we? Well, after seeing the behind the scenes of how the scoring works, it's like, oh, that's why. The vignette scoring software is completely separate from the vignette development software. And it's just one of those unique separations that back in 1990, that was the decision they made. So we literally don't have a practice vignette scoring software. It doesn't exist. The only scoring software is the one that's held by our test psychometric consultants that score your exam for you.
But you won't have to worry about that for 5.0, which leads into our next question from Megan. How will the vignette portion change in 5.0?
Well, the simple answer is the vignettes are going away in 5.0. So that's part of why we're not updating the practice software, and we won't have to worry about that once 5.0 comes out. Once you start taking 5.0. What we will be introducing in 5.0 are some new item types. So right now we've got the single select multiple choice, the check all that apply where you check 3 or 4 answers out of the ones offered, and the quantitative fill in the blank. On 5.0, we'll introduce 2 new item types called a drag and place and a hotspot. And the intent on both of those are slightly different, but the intent is that you will be presented with graphic information, a picture, a construction detail, whatever it might be, and you'll be asked to point to a spot on that diagram, move an object onto the picture to demonstrate that same sort of graphic knowledge that you're doing on the vignettes, but just in a different format.
And one of the great things is, guess what? Scoring is built into the new test driver.
Right.
So it's going to allow us some opportunities for faster score reports and maybe even some better feedback.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Our next question comes from Jose. How long will a past exam stay on my NCARB record?
So any division that is passed, that score is valid for 5 years. And then after 5 years, if you have not completed all of the other divisions of the ARE, then that one division will expire. That's called our rolling clock policy. And we do want to let you know that there are extensions to the 5-year rolling clock. So for birth or adoption of a child, serious medical condition, military service, or other like causes, people apply for an extension to the 5-year rolling clock. And then if it's granted, it extends that however long it needs to be based on whatever the situation was.
And every time you get a score report, there is a line at the bottom of the report that reminds you what that rolling clock is. So you never don't feel like you have to memorize that date. I think most people probably do, but we do give you updates as that time moves along, as you start moving your way through the exams, just so you remember, keep in mind what that time is.
And you can always log back into your My Examination, and you can look at your exam history, see when you tested. I cannot tell you what days I've tested. I have blocked that out of my memory. But the reality is I can always go look it up. Right.
Kyle would like to know, does a person or computer grade the vignettes?
It is all computer scored. So humans do not get involved in the scoring. What happens is multiple choice. Obviously, people understand how a computer can very quickly make that assessment. For the computer, for the vignettes, what it does is it really is looking at all the relationships of those objects that you have created. So in something like schematic design, when you're in building layout, it can very easily calculate the area of that room, compare it to what the program area was. Were you within the plus or minus 10% range as acceptable? It then says, oh, well, this room is supposed to be close to that room. It can measure the distance, and it's making all of these judgments very quickly. What I will tell you is for something like schematic design, I've watched the computer do the scoring. It's not that exciting, but it takes about 1.5 minutes per building layout vignette to even score it. Some of our vignettes, it's much shorter. The computer can score them in as quickly as 30 seconds.
Learn something new every day.
Thank you.
Can you please explain why you have extra questions that show up in the multiple choice section that aren't included in scoring?
Sure. That question is referring to what we call our pre-test questions, where we are testing out new questions before they actually become operational. I know that it can sometimes be frustrating as a candidate to think, oh, wait, if I spend time on this, what if these points don't actually count towards my score? Why am I spending time on it? But these really are a benefit to all candidates. The idea that we're testing out our questions before we're really testing you with them helps us assess, are they good questions or aren't they? We want to make sure that all the questions that we're asking are fair and reasonable questions, and doing the pre-test blocks of questions on the multiple choice exams gives us a chance to just verify that we're asking good questions.
And that's standard practice in exam development, correct?
It is. It's actually very standard practice. In the NCARB world, what you can expect is that on any division you're being administered for multiple choice, it's about 15 to 20% of the items are going to be pretest questions. You're never going to know which ones they are, so you do need to do your best at every single item that you're presented. What we will say is from a vignette perspective, we obviously don't do pretest vignettes.
Sure.
Because you're only given one vignette, that's the one that counts, so do your best. What we do is we actually have a separate committee of licensed architects that reviews all of the vignettes before they're released into the test center against a series of checklists over and over multiple times to make sure that every vignette is valid before it's released into the test center.
So I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. People are confused about the levels on the score report. Can you explain them briefly?
Certainly. So we'll go back. On page 2 of every score report, there's your descriptive feedback on a failing score report only, not on a passing one. Every content area and every vignette is going to be broken down into either level 1, level 2, or level 3. And these are highlighted by either blue for level 1, or if you're in level 2 or 3, it comes in as the gray square. So if it's level 1, what that means is that on that content area for multiple choice, you have performed at a level that would be considered acceptable if we were looking at just that area. Like if we were looking at just codes and regulations and you did level 1, that means you did a good job on that area of codes and regulations. As you go down, what you'll very likely see is that some of those other areas, you may not be in level 1, you're likely going to be in a level 2 or level 3. So level 2 typically means you were close, with probably within 1 or 2 questions, maybe 3, of getting to that acceptable threshold. And then if you're at level 3, then you're even further down from that. Now, realize the ranges vary. I said 1 or 2 questions and maybe 3, because it's all about, in some sections, codes and regulations might only be 10% of the exam. Again, only 5 or 6 items. Whereas you go into something like building, design, and construction systems, and you're talking about masonry, you could get more items on that. So the ranges sort of expand and contract based on the overall number of items per content area. So it's a little complex, which is why we've tried to simplify it into the whole level 1, level 2, or level 3.
And one thing, just to follow up on what you were mentioning, as far as the percentage of the exam for any particular content area, that's listed in our exam guide. So in the exam guide, we talked before about the content areas that are in that specific division in those multiple choice questions. We do go a little bit more in depth than that in the exam guide and say that 10% of the exam covers this content area. Another content area might represent 50% of the exam. So that gives you a little bit more of an idea of not just what areas to study, but maybe where to really focus your studies.
Absolutely. And then, so let's jump back to the vignettes now. So that's the other part. So we've talked, that was all just about multiple choice. So then when we get into vignettes, again, level 1 means you did well on that vignette. You've done an acceptable solution. If you get into level 2, it's not an acceptable solution, and you're kind of getting into that gray area of it's not acceptable, but it wasn't like really bad, and there really isn't a much better way of explaining it. So level 2s tends to be a series of little mistakes that were made throughout the solution. And it's not that big critical error, or it's not a couple of critical errors that are true hardcore life safety issues. It's the little things where, from a welfare perspective, maybe you're not efficiently designing the solution as you were asked to. That's something that can move you into a level 2. When you get into level 3, those are typically those big errors. Something like, oh, I forgot footings on my building section. That's going to be really bad. It's going to quickly move you into a level 3. We talked about dead-end corridors earlier in the building layout. That's a very critical health, safety, welfare issue, and obviously health and safety. That's going to move you very quickly into the level 3s.
Thanks, Jared. Our next question comes from Nicole. If you retake an exam after getting a fail, is it possible that you'll see the same questions on the retake?
No.
Well, it is maybe. And that, again, this is where exam development can become very interesting. Yes, I fully admit I am an architect, and I'm also a testing nerd. I self-proclaim that, because it's very interesting to think about how you develop a licensure exam. It is likely that you may see 1 or 2 of the exact same questions. You may even feel like you saw more than 1 or 2 questions, but what you're very likely experiencing is the fact of very similar questions to ones that were exposed to you previously. Because there's only so many ways we can ask you about flashing in a masonry wall. So you're going to hear the question one way when you test, and if you happen to retest, you might walk out of there going, I think I had that question before. Well, you may have, or you may not have. You may have had a question that was just very similar.
Thanks. And this is our last question. Which divisions of the exam include history of architecture?
So the answer is none of them.
Oh.
So the reality is the history of architecture is not a primary focus in the health, safety, and welfare of the public when it comes to licensing architects. Now, application of historical concepts that are still important today will be assessed. So you should not expect to see questions like, which architect did this building? But what you may see are questions like, this building, a very significant architectural building such as the John Hancock building in Chicago, right? Very iconic, and people understand the structural implications of what they were doing in that design. The question is going to be more based on that, not about which architect did this or in what year was such and such project built.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us and submitting your questions. And if you have additional questions, you can always reach out to us through social media or by calling our customer service department. And be sure to check the blog next week because we'll be posting a video recap of today's webinar. Thank you. We'll see you next time.